Another weekend of college football is in the books. After last week's boring slate, Week 3 delivered a number of incredible games and some thrilling finishes and upsets. With the wild weekend now over, here is my top 25 after Week 3 of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are you love college football, and odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. Ohio State took down Ohio 37-9. Julian Sayin threw for 350 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. Meanwhile, wide receiver Jeremiah Smith had another great game as he had 9 receptions for 150 yards with a receiving touchdown. Another week, another very easy Penn State opponent as they took down Villanova 52-6. Drew Aller threw for 200 yards with a passing touchdown. Meanwhile, on the ground, Katron Allen ran for 85 yards with a touchdown, and Nicholas Singleton also ran for 85 yards, but with 2 touchdowns. It's been a very easy start to the season for Penn State, but the next time we see them, they'll be facing an actual opponent as they'll host Oregon in 2 weeks. Early on, it was looking like LSU might be on upset watch at home, but they pulled away, defeating Florida 20-10. Garrett Nussmeier threw for over 200 yards and had a passing touchdown. Meanwhile, on the ground, Caden Durham was the leading rusher as he had 100 yards. They're 3-0, they're ranked number 3 in the country, and LSU has had one of the better starts we've seen from a team so far in 2025. Despite winning by only 20 points, this game was a bigger blowout than it indicates as Oregon took down Northwestern 34-14. Dante Moore was nearly perfect as he completed 16-20 passes for 200 yards with a passing score. Meanwhile, on the ground, De'Aaron Hill Jr. led the way for the Ducks as he had 100 yards with a rushing score. I know they haven't played anyone all that great just yet, but every time I watch Oregon play, I come away more impressed, and I genuinely think this is one of the better teams in all of college football this year. I mentioned it briefly when talking about Penn State, but Oregon goes on the road to take on the Nittany Lions in 2 weeks, and that is going to be the early game of the year in college football. Georgia won a thrilling game in overtime over Tennessee as this was by far the game of the day. Early on, it wasn't looking good for Georgia as they trailed 21-7, but they had an incredible fourth quarter comeback and they walked it off in overtime to win by 3. Gunnar Stockton had his best game as a Bulldog as he threw for 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also added 40 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Now, defense was optional on both sides in this game considering both teams scored more than 40 points and both teams had 500 yards of total offense, but what we saw from Georgia's offense, that's what I wanted to see from this team to believe if they were a true national championship contender, and they delivered it for me. Miami moved to 3-0 with their dominant 49-12 victory over South Florida. Carson Beck had his best game as a Hurricane as he threw for 350 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. He also added 30 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Running back Mark Fletcher had himself quite the day as he ran for 120 yards with 2 rushing scores. Miami was a popular team this weekend that was on upset watch, mainly because they were taking on South Florida, who had back-to-back upsets to begin their season. Miami put those rumors to rest pretty early on, as they were up 28-6 at the half and they won by 37 points. Oklahoma won an easy one as they went on the road to take on Temple, winning 42-3. Another day, another great game from John Mateer. He threw for just under 300 yards and had a passing touchdown while adding 60 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Overall as a team, the Sooners ran for 230 yards and had 4 rushing scores and were led by Torrey Blaylock, who had 100 yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. Illinois moved to 3-0 on the year with their dominant 38-0 victory over Western Michigan. Luke Altmaier threw for 200 yards and had 2 passing touchdowns while adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Meanwhile, running back Caden Fegan had another great game, running for 100 yards with a rushing score. I say this almost every week, but with Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon getting all the praise in the Big Ten, don't sleep on Illinois, who is quietly a top 10 team as well. I've had Texas A&M in my top 25 the last couple of weeks. I might have legitimately forgot about them last week. I'm not going to forget about them this week because what a performance from the Aggies. They went on the road, defeated Notre Dame in a very thrilling finish, winning 41-40. Quarterback Marcel Reed had quite the performance as he threw for 360 yards and 2 passing touchdowns on only 17 completions. Wide receiver Mario Craver had one of the best games we've seen from a wide receiver this year as he caught 7 passes for 200 yards with a receiving score. Meanwhile, on the ground, Le'Veon Moss did nearly everything as he ran for 80 yards with 3 rushing scores for the Aggies. I wasn't all that impressed with Texas A&M so far early in the year, but after this thrilling performance over Notre Dame, I definitely am buying the Aggies as a potential playoff team. Another week, another very easy opponent for Indiana as they defeated Indiana State 73-0. Fernando Mendoza had his best game as a Hoosier, throwing for just under 300 yards with 5 passing touchdowns. He was also nearly perfect as he completed 19 of 20 passes. Meanwhile, on the ground, he also added a rushing score as well, giving him 6 for the day. Kobe Martin led the way on the ground for Indiana as he ran for 110 yards with 2 rushing scores. Overall, as a team, Indiana ran for over 300 yards and had 3 rushing touchdowns. I keep dropping Texas lower and lower, and it's because they just don't look all that great right now. They took down UTEP 27-10. Although they won by 17 points, and this game was truly never on upset watch, they were just never able to pull away from UTEP, a team they were favored to beat by more than 30 points. Arch Manning was underwhelming once again. He completed only 11 of 25 passes for 100 yards and had an interception. I think at one point in this game, he actually had 10 straight incompletions. Now, he did add 2 touchdowns on the ground with 50 rushing yards, but through the first 3 weeks of the season, Arch Manning, I just don't think he's looked the part for Texas, and I don't think Texas has looked like a national championship contender just yet. Florida State was off this weekend, so here's where I got them ranked. If you like points, this was the game for you, as Ole Miss took down Arkansas 41-35. Getting the start for Ole Miss was Trinidad Chambliss. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar to you, well, that's because he wasn't familiar to majority of college football fans. This is a transfer quarterback that came over from Ferris State in the offseason. Well, he had quite the debut for Ole Miss, and he definitely emerged as one of the more underrated quarterbacks in all of college football. He threw for 350 yards and had a passing touchdown. He was also the leading rusher for the Rebels, running for 60 yards with 2 rushing scores. Safe to say that after this performance, he's probably going to be the guy for Ole Miss moving forward. Utah picked up a pretty comfortable 31-6 victory over Wyoming. Now, despite winning by 25 points, this was actually a 3-point game entering the half, but the Utes outscored the Cowboys 28-6 in the second half. Devin Dampier had another great game, adding to his Heisman campaign as he threw for 230 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, while also beating the leading rusher for the Utes, adding 90 yards on the ground. All offseason, I talked about Utah having a bounce-back season led by Devin Dampier, and through 3 weeks, they're doing just that. Iowa State moved to 4-0 on the season as they took down Arkansas State 24-16. Rocco Beck threw for 265 yards with a passing touchdown, while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Meanwhile, running back Carson Hansen led the way as he had 120 rushing yards, averaging 7 yards per attempt. After making it all the way to the Big 12 title game last season, Iowa State has gotten off to a great start as they won their first 4 games. It was looking like Auburn was going to dominate this game early on, but they had a very quiet second half. Still, they took down South Alabama, winning 31-15. Jackson Arnold threw for 150 yards and had a passing touchdown, while also adding 50 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores. Meanwhile, running back Jeremiah Cobb led the way for the Tigers as he ran for 120 yards and had a rushing touchdown. I didn't want to drop Tennessee down too much because they really should have won this game against Georgia. A missed field goal as time expired would have given them the upset, and they probably would have been a top 8-10 team in all of college football. Instead, their kicker missed the kick, they didn't score a touchdown in overtime, and they lost a heartbreaker, losing by 3 points. Joey Aguilar had quite the day as he threw for 370 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. He also added a touchdown on the ground as well. With that said, he also had 2 costly interceptions, and he also had a number of bad plays when Tennessee needed him most. I think Tennessee is still a really good team, but every time we see them play a really good opponent, stuff like this happens. Texas Tech continued their hot start to the season as they took down Oregon State 45-14. Baron Morton had one of the best games we've seen from a quarterback so far in 2025. He threw for 465 yards and had 4 passing touchdowns. Majority of the offense for the Red Raiders came through the air. Texas Tech had 3 wide receivers in Coy Eakin, Jacoby Williams, and Terrence Carter Jr. that finished this game with more than 100 receiving yards, more than 6 catches, and a receiving touchdown. Georgia Tech walked it off as time expired as they upset Clemson 24-21. Haynes King had yet another fantastic performance, as it really does feel like he's one of the big game quarterbacks in college football. He pretty much provided all of the offense for Georgia Tech. He completed 20 of 28 passes, throwing for more than 200 yards. Of Georgia Tech's 147 rushing yards, Haynes King had 103 of them with a rushing score. Georgia Tech has been a team that's slowly been on the rise these last couple of years, and I think they're definitely here to stay, and they're a legitimate threat in the ACC. Speaking of teams that have been slowly climbing up the last couple of years, Vanderbilt is now 3-0, and they took down South Carolina on the road 31-7. Diego Paiava had himself quite the day, as he threw for just under 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also added 25 yards on the ground as well. It was a very solid showing from Vanderbilt's offense, but it was their defense that really won this game for them. South Carolina's offense couldn't get anything going, and they held the Cogs to only 86 yards on the ground. Now, I will say, a large reason South Carolina sucked in this game was the fact that Lenora Sellers was knocked out in the first half, and he didn't return. But I'm not going to take anything away from Vanderbilt because they looked fantastic. Michigan got back in the win column with a dominant 63-3 victory over Central Michigan. Bryce Underwood had his best game as a collegiate quarterback. He threw for over 230 yards and had a passing touchdown while being the leading rusher for the Wolverines. On 9 attempts, he ran for 115 yards, averaging 13 yards per attempt with 2 rushing scores. Running back Justice Haynes had another solid performance as he added over 100 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Arizona State got back in the win column as well, bouncing back from that last-second loss against Mississippi State last week. They took down Texas State 34-15. Sam Leavitt had another solid showing as he threw for 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while adding 60 yards on the ground with a rushing score as well. Raleek Brown is emerging as one of the better running backs in the nation as he added 150 yards with a rushing touchdown. Oh, and wide receiver Jordan Tyson had another fantastic game, adding 6 receptions for 100 yards with a receiving score. After last week's thrilling victory over Kansas, Missouri had an easy win against Louisiana, winning by 42 points. Quarterback Bo Pribula threw for 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. He also added a touchdown on the ground as well. Meanwhile, running back Ahmed Hardy had the best game we've seen from a running back so far this year. He ran for 250 yards, averaging more than 11 yards per attempt with 3 rushing scores. The craziest part about that performance is the fact that Missouri had another good rushing performance that is going to be completely buried. Marquise Davis ran for 115 yards with a rushing score as well. Overall as a team, Missouri ran for 430 yards, averaging 7 yards per attempt. Baylor had an easy one as they took down Stanford by 35 points. Sawyer Robinson had a solid game as he threw for over 200 yards and had 3 passing touchdowns. Running back Bryson Washington was great once again as he led the team with 135 yards on the ground and had 2 rushing scores. We're going to close today's top 25 with a potentially controversial opinion, but I still have Notre Dame ranked as a top 25 team despite them starting the season 0-2. I talked about it earlier when speaking about Texas A&M, but this was a game that Notre Dame probably could have won, and if it wasn't for a botched PAT, they very well could have won it. Jeremiah Love ran for 100 yards with a receiving touchdown while also having 50 yards through the air with a receiving score as well. Jadarian Prince had 70 yards on the ground with 2 rushing scores as well. Again, I know Notre Dame is 0-2, they've lost back-to-back games to begin the season, but they've lost to 2 teams who are probably deserving of being ranked inside the top 10, and both of these losses were very, very close. I know it's really tough to make that argument, but I think an 0-2 Notre Dame that has lost back-to-back heartbreaking finishes to top 10 teams is better than a 3-0 team that has played 3 cupcake opponents. Well, that wraps it up for today's video. What are your thoughts on this top 25? Was there a team I had ranked way too high or a team I had ranked way too low? Also, was there a team that didn't crack the top 25 that you think should have been in here? Whoever it is, let me know in the comments down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm, and it helps share this video and my channel with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.